Recently interested to learn that in Jersey City, for rentals, the city, about a year ago, kind of in the middle of the COVID lockdown, changed how renters were to be charged for water and trash. And trash is a big, stinky, awful problem for any city, especially big urban cores, where people tend to not really pay attention to how the trash is being taken away. And there's, usually one day a week where the trash people come, and even though we're way up in the air, they take the trash, and the smell is just, I guess, the smell of death. Terrible, terrible stench. And almost every day is trash day in a big city, so you're going to smell that deathly smell as the garbage is removed at least once a day, and it hangs around, that smell, 2, 3, 4 hours. So the city used to combine, when they were charging landlords, water and trash. And they were bound together as one fee, sanitation fee, whatever. And now that a lot of cities have gone to, separate carting for the removal of trash, I guess the city decided, well, we're going to make it a little bit cheaper for landlords to deal with, water, which is very expensive, and just have the residents, the good people, pay a special hauling fee for their trash removal every month. So about a year ago, in all new leases and contracts, it's required now by the city to collect $12.50 from each apartment. Not per person, but per apartment. And that's a reasonable fee for getting rid of your stinky garbage every month. But it's just interesting that they're now putting that fee on the backs of residents, where it used to be bundled invisibly with regular carting. Excuse me. And one thing that I was fascinated to learn in my research on this topic, like, what is that $12.50 fee? Is that water for landlords of apartments, pretty much, don't charge, not allowed to charge, individual residents for water. It's just something that has to be included in the price of rent. There's no individual water meter per apartment. Now, some landlords want that because there are people who mess around with their water. Like if they've been thrown out of their apartment, they're getting evicted, there are some people who are nasty and who will just turn on every faucet and shower and bathtub in their apartment and let it run 24 hours a day to eventually cost the landlord that they no longer like a lot of money. And since water is only billed like every 3 months, it's sort of hard to pin down who's messing with you and the water if you have a lot of turnover in your building. But that's, I guess, an assumed risk that landlords in big cities take. And I was wondering, I wonder why they individually, meter us for gas, electric, but not for water. And now they're sort of flat feeing us for garbage. And in my research, I thought it was very interesting to learn that people who don't have a lot of money tend to want to save money in drastic and sometimes dangerous ways. Now, if you've ever visited someone who lives in like a housing project or some kind of sustained supported living, where, their rent is reduced, but they are responsible for the electricity, you'll find that people who live there generally do not ever turn the lights on unless they absolutely have to. They keep the windows open, they, maybe watch television, but if you don't need a light on, they have them all off. Which is understandable. They don't want electricity, they don't want to pay for it, they don't want an AC window air conditioner. They're trying to keep their monthly nut reduced and down as small as possible. Okay, that makes sense. And a lot of times when you go into, these apartments, if it's a community living kind of thing, the first thing you have to do is you walk into an apartment, with the resident answering the door. And the first thing you do is you have to say lights, because their entire apartment is dark. And there are some who will fight you, say, I don't want to turn on my lights. You use your flashlight. It's insanity. So knowing that when people are charged individually, like for electricity that's metered, the reason that cities do not allow landlords, houses are different, single-family homes, to not charge for water is that if people had to pay for the water they were using, they would not use the water very much, okay? They would not clean their apartments. They would not shower very often. Water is, I guess, a necessity of life in many ways that I guess electricity is not necessarily life-sustaining in the same way that water is. And that made a lot of sense, because the people who are going to be stingy with their electricity bill are going to be stingy with water. Don't flush the toilet, just leave all the poop in there for 3 days and then we'll flush. Every 3 days we'll flush the toilet, which will cause terrible trouble. Or, I don't want to take a shower this week, I'll take a shower in 4 weeks when I feel like it, because I want to save money on my water. Well, I'm not going to cook or clean or wash my dishes or run a dishwasher if I have it, because I don't want to be charged for the water. And the other side of that is that people will waste water. And I guess these big cities think it's better for the health of the city to have people using a lot of water than to make them pay for it where they know they will self-restrict and will have an unhealthy, unsafe city. So that's a very interesting take that actually makes a lot of sense to me. And there are some people who, live in a house. They pay for the water themselves, and they don't want to flush the toilet. They don't want you to take 2 or 3 showers a week because they don't want to pay for it. So this is the interesting conundrum of trying to live a human life and trying to figure out where these new rules and laws come from. And I remember in one place we used to live, the landlord was going into every apartment to see if there was running water from somewhere, because he said his water bill was very high. He said usually for a building with 6 apartments, it was $13,000, whatever, every 3 months. And the most recent one, it had doubled to $26,000. And that was a big problem because he didn't want to pay. And he was trying to figure out, if people were messing with him or if there was a leak somewhere, somebody's toilet was, constantly running, or if there was a leak in the ground, which probably is not what was going on, because in this city, the ground where we lived was bedrock. So it's not like something could necessarily break because everything around it is very hard and not going to break. And I said to him, as he was in our apartment, seeing if our toilet was running, and it wasn't, you have to think back to who doesn't like you, who was living here in the 3 months that this was tallied up. And if it was an eviction or if they're not happy, I think you should probably think that they did something to the water, like running every faucet they had for 24 hours a day until they left. And then once they leave and they turn everything off and give the keys back or whatever, they've been evicted, they've already done the damage. They've already had their revenge. So that's another assumed risk that these landlords have to take. Now, if the tenant was paying for that water that they were wasting to try to pay you back, that would be a different story. It wouldn't happen because they don't want to pay for it. But as long as the landlord is paying for it, as long as it's part of the rent, then we'll just run every faucet we have until forever. And that's why there used to be a time when you had an apartment and the water came out freely. Now they have all these filters and these aerators and the water pressure. It's kind of what Donald Trump talked about. Everybody made fun of him. Oh, the toilets don't flush like they used to. Well, neither does the shower as it used to, and neither does the water pressure in your kitchen sink work the same way, because everybody's trying to rightly save money and preserve ration water, because we're running out of this stuff. But Trump is right about that. That you used to have very good water flow, and not so much anymore on purpose. It's designed that way. So, hey, what else is in the news? Lots of very strange and interesting things going on in this world. And let me see if I can find one for you. We have to talk about ChatGPT. That will be very interesting. We have so many things coming up. But we'll start with this, because this is fresh content. This just popped up seconds before we went live.